And we are ready.
All right. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Seward City Council to order. Assistant City Manager, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Tonight's roll call: Wells.
Here.
Osenga.
Here.
DeMoss.
Here.
Casagranda. Not yet. I know she's coming. Calhoun.
Here.
McClure.
Here.
And Mayor Terry is excused. Vice Mayor McClure is presiding. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have citizen comments on any subject except those scheduled for public hearing. There's no public hearing. If you've signed in, you'll be given the first opportunity to speak, and time is limited to 3 minutes per speaker and 36 minutes total speaking time. And even though this is a special meeting, I'd like you to come up to the podium and state your name and whether you're inside or outside the city limits for the record. Is there anyone that's signed in?
No, ma'am.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak? Okay, you will have a chance later on during this meeting. All right, so up to the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda, I'd need a motion and a second to approve.
I move for the approval of tonight's agenda and consent agenda.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any changes, deletions, or additions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Voting on the approval of tonight's agenda and consent agenda: Calhoun.
Yes.
DeMoss.
Yes.
Osenga.
Yes.
Wells.
Yes.
And McClure.
Yes.
Thank you. For the record, I note that Casagranda arrived 5:32. And your agenda and consent agenda are approved, and you have no items on consent tonight.
Okay, thank you. We're down to new business, other new business items. We intend to go into a committee of the whole to determine the location of the new public works facility, and I need a motion and a second to make that happen.
I'll make a motion to go into committee of the whole.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to go into committee of the whole to discuss and determine the location for the new public works facility. Madam Clerk, could you get a vote on that?
Voting on the motion to move into committee of the whole: Calhoun.
Yes.
Wells.
Yes.
Casagranda.
Yes.
DeMoss.
Yes.
Osenga.
Yes.
And McClure.
Yes.
That motion is approved.
Okay, we are now in a committee of the whole. And what I would like to do is, in keeping with how Mayor Terry has done it, begin with an overview from administration, and then I'll ask if citizens have any comments at that point, and then bring it back to the council to ask further questions of administration and discuss and see where we get. Does that sound okay with everyone? Okay, so administration, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Whatever it is.
As requested, we brought back before you 3 locations for the Public Works facility. If you remember, it was previously at 6. We were asked to bring back these 3, and we have the information regarding those. And Director Bickling is going to go through them with us.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, everybody. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and walk through these 3 properties, and some of this will be review. It's probably good to go over since we haven't gone over it in a little while. Feel free to stop me at any time if you have any questions, and then we do So the first property is the snow dump, and the one that's just known as the snow dump. It is 6.5 acres, and then the adjacent property that we also own underneath there is 2.16 acres, and that's for a total of 8.21 total acres there. They're zoned resource management and institutional. And just to review, is we did have some criteria that it needs to be 4 acres or larger. And so this one is obviously larger than 4 acres. It is kind of has the feel of an industrial type area, which would be appropriate for its use. It does sit very far back in the tsunami zone. It has multiple accesses, and the electric utilities are kind of at the site, adjacent to the site. And then kind of getting into the liabilities, it was just the information that that you guys requested. We have estimates for the water and sewer that need to be extended to the site. And so it's about $120,000 for water and about $280,000 for sewer. And then Mexico gave us an estimated, just an estimate to do like a basic fill, spread, and compact, and then vibro compact a specific area, about a 10,000 square foot, which is what we envision about the building to be. And the total is actually, there's a typo in it. It should be 594,560, 594,560, not 549. So it's in a FEMA designated flood zone, but if we did fill it and bring that up to grade, we could apply for a letter of map revision to remove it from the flood map. So that's, and then it does have, you can see following there, you can see that we have to include the utility maps for water, sewer, and electric. The D-firm map, and Metco's estimate there for fill and compaction. Happy to answer any questions on that.
Medco had listed other expenses that weren't tallied in this total from them. What's the likelihood of that some amount from their estimate actually going up from surveying or compaction testing, even engineering? I mean, is that a possibility on?
Yeah, possibility that could go up. That was one of those things where Cole and I walked out to the property and we kind of looked. We knew that the adjacent Gillespie property, kind of at what that level was, and we walked around and kind of were just getting an estimate of like how much you would probably need to fill in around there. But yeah, it could go up if you did engineering and then really got it so it's exact. But it was just kind of taking on Cole's kind of extra expert advice there and filling that area. So that's what we kind of went off of.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So the next property is the Fort Raymond property, and it's the one that sits to the south there, kind of between the Chicago-Smith property, and it is over 4 acres. It is currently zoned auto commercial. It is close to the highway. It does have possible multiple accesses. There could possibly be a sewer, an entrance to the highway there, but that would be like a DOT process that you'd have to work through. I have had conversations with Doug about that, about the process. I know he's talked to DOT just kind of about in theory of that could be done. It is adjacent to another city facility, which is always a plus. It does have all the utilities at the site, electric, water, sewer. It is outside the flood zone. The liabilities could be if there's not another entrance to be put in there, it would increase traffic near the schools. And I don't know if there would be any possible liabilities for the health clinic being next door to that. So, and we do have the utility maps enclosed. Any questions on that topic?
Actually, I have a question.
Sure.
The increased traffic near the schools, this is presuming it would come out on their entrance Why would the entrance be on sea land?
Yeah, so if that DOT entrance, if DOT, we have to get an approved DOT entrance
Right.
directly into the highway. And so if that was not approved, or if it was delayed or something like that, so that the entrance for that property would be Diamond and then out to Sea Lion. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Are there other questions about this property at this point? It's time for questions later. Yes.
I do have questions about this property.
Councilmember Cascaranda.
Thank you. Let's see, I have heard that many people have approached the city about purchasing Fort Raymond land. How many are wanting up against the generators, like on that back part of the people that have approached?
Yes.
Of those who approached it, all of them. Yeah, that's not been a barrier.
Okay. And
Go ahead.
what types of people are asking?
It's the range, commercial, residential, employee housing. It is the range.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, go ahead.
And the last property you have is the Alaska Railroad property. And since our last discussion, I think we got a little bit, it was adjusted, that lot was adjusted. It is 4.6 acres. And it's currently zoned auto commercial. It is in an industrial area. It does have somewhat direct highway access. It's outside of the flood zone. We would have to lease that from the Alaska Railroad, and they use a leasing similar to what the city does, where they take 8% of the appraised value on an annual basis. From the estimation that was just put together very recently, the estimation is to be about $76,000 per year. So for that lease, it does have a single access to the property, which is that would kind of come across Lear Road there and onto the highway. And then to get the utility cost to the site would be about $260,000 total. And then you can see there's the we have the utility maps attached as well. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions about that parcel? All right, hearing none. Do you have any other presentation right now?
No, that's it.
All righty, thank you. What I'd like to do is see if any of the citizens here have anything to say at this point, and if you do, you could come up to the podium and, just for the record, say if you're inside, your name and inside or outside city limits.
Great, I missed the public comments. I'm Micah Van Buskirk. I live inside the city limits. I wanted to comment on property number 2, the Fort Raymond site. I sincerely hope that that's one of the pieces of property that the Victus is considering for the recreation facility. I don't know the details of what they're considering, but I've been here for 25 years. I've been on 3 different recreation committees. One was through the city. Every single time that, or since that property's been available, that has been the #1 choice for a recreation facility due to its close proximity to the schools. It's 4 acres, it should be big enough. Then maybe some parking can be elsewhere. I'm not an engineer. Anyways, I'm hoping that that is one of the properties they're considering, and if not, that if it could be one that they consider, I think it is really, really a perfect location for a recreational facility close to our schools. I also think that's a prime real estate area since it's come open. Lots, like Chrissy said, lots of people have been interested in it. I'd like to see less industrial right there and more in other areas, not right on our highway, right next to a commercial zone. I know it'd probably be the least expensive, but I hope at least if you choose that, maybe let's see what they say from Victus if they're considering that property. I hope they are. The traffic on Sea Line is a big concern. I'm also president of the school site council, and when they put the electrical building there, that was a big concern of ours. We couldn't stop it, but we were very concerned about the additional traffic right at the elementary school. So that additional traffic on Sea Line with all the parents coming in and out and the kids hiking and biking to school, I think should be seriously considered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Carol, go ahead.
Carol Griswold, Inside City Limits. Just have some scattered notes here on my usual presentation. The tsunami inundation maps, the updates, are due to be out this August, I understand. And I would like to wait on a final decision until we see those maps. I think they might be quite different than what we have now. It would be prudent to take that new information into consideration. I wonder if the railroad freight trains might block access to the highway to that railroad leased property. That's the main reason I understand why the helistop is in town, because if it was at the airport, which is much more convenient, it could be, the ambulances could be blocked by a 100-car freight train. So I would, and then if it's not, the traffic route would be down Lear to Port and then around and out, and I don't know, it just seems kind of circuitous to get out, especially in an emergency. As for leases, I'm really opposed to a lease with the railroad. I feel that we should not sell any city land until our city needs are met. We're running up against this at the Fort Raymond site, where we've already carved out a big chunk, and we still, now we're looking at leasing because we've sold city property. So I'm just opposed to leases, and don't sell any more city land until our city needs are met. On the first site, the snow dump site, if that is chosen, it'd be nice to move the Parks and Rec warehouse there as well, so that we can consolidate some of our facilities. And will it have issues with that site similar to the former, well, the former site that was geoteched and was rejected? So it's like, well, you know, 1,000 feet of silt, maybe stump dumps, I don't know. But we would certainly have to know what is the stability of that soil before we dump quite a bit of money into fixing it up. The Fort Raymond site, I noted that spaghetti map of sewer and water from the military is not very useful. So I would not even look at that as something that we could actually use. It all has to be redone. But it is close by, so that is quite a savings. The site could be large enough to engineer an access road next to the highway, sort of a parallel road, so that it wouldn't be coming out directly, and that could solve some of the conflicts with that site. And then again, the third site, the railroad site, I'm opposed to giving them $76,000 a year forever, and that will go up. I think that should be struck from the list. It's also the former site of Roundhouse Pond. If you remember, there used to be swans there, and rare Ross's gull and some other cool birds. Now it's just a gravel pit. But are there springs underneath? I don't know what the source of water was for Roundhouse Pond, but I would just advise don't go with the railroad. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to bring it back to council and see what your thoughts are. Who wants to kick it off? Councilmember Wells.
So after speaking with administration regarding the comparison of the three properties, the railroad property at $75,000 a year with the odds of them increasing it. Let's say it's a 5-year lease with the option of renewal, but then it gets increased as the property value increases. To develop the snow dump site came out to be, let's say, $1 million. It would take 10 years for us to retrieve our investment, or to 10 years of leasing land before we were at that $1 million value for increasing the snow dump site. So it only makes sense that it would be, our money would be better well spent in improving our own property. And if the other property, if we have so many people that are interested in buying it, instead of us turning it into a city facility, if that money could be, if we could sell that property, help with the housing issue, and move those funds towards the development of the snow dump property, then actually our investment is just over $600,000 to develop the snow dump property to make it buildable, which is, that means that's 5 years at a $75,000 lease. So to me, the snow dump property of these 3 properties is the most financial sense.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Osenga.
I don't know if I can ask this, but I haven't heard from the Public Works
Oh, yeah,
Director
we can ask questions of, yeah,
and what they thought, since it's the Public Works facility.
sure. If that's okay, we'd bring Doug up here and we could ask him questions and then continue. I was going to ask some questions anyway.
Do you have a question in mind?
I just wanted to know what your thoughts were, if you had any ideas or thoughts on these 3 that we had in front of us here.
Well, all 3 properties meet the size range, right? We were looking for 4 acres at least right in there to make things work. All 3 of them have different accesses, different ways to get in and out. I mean, access is a big thing. I would think on the railroad, it'd be a tough one in and out with the tracks and having to come out Lear if we did. When we're parked on the tracks, I mean, literally coming out, we're parked on the tracks with a grader. Just as a kind of an iffy thing on that one. Over at the snow dump, I would say we would enter from decaraff wherever we could, but we really need room in there. I don't know how to do a snow dump otherwise of how to do that. And so that's another question, that where's that go to and how. And over Fort Raymond, the same, you have, you know, the question on, do you come out C line with the bus traffic, or how do you do that, if and when. But we do have a legal exit there that we just have to prop it to 90 degrees, you know, to the highway to make that in there. And the state just won't okay it being a hairpin entrance back in there. So I think there's feelings every which way on all 3 of them. You know, I think I've probably made mine out that I know which way I'm different than maybe Jeanette or maybe you guys, you know, and I prefer getting into the Fort Raymond, but that's a decision to make here on what the costs are and versus the other ones. You know, and any specific questions I'd be willing to answer.
Councilmember Osenga.
I'm sorry, where did you say that you'd be able to modify a way in and out of Fort Raymond?
Where Diamond hits the highway.
Where Diamond hits the highway.
Right.
Okay, that's what I.
So you'd have to block off Diamond right near the smokehouse there, so they still can get in, but Diamond cannot exit out on the highway. You'd have to do a straight in, perpendicular to the highway, straight into the property. So it'd be a single entrance. It wouldn't be something that would be shared with other entities.
Okay.
Other questions? Relative to that, you've talked with DOT about that, and have you talked to DOT about allowing that access?
Several times.
And they are...
There's no
Okay.
promise, right? I mean, they until you give them a plan, they don't look at it. But when I talked to Danica Simpson at DOT, who's the right-of-way agent again, that's something that certainly is already there. It's just how do you make it?
Okay.
So that's going to be up to them, and that's what she had said. It has to be more of a straight in. No way will they okay it the way it is.
Then I was going to ask you about snow dumping. If we took the snow dump site, where in the world are we going to dump snow?
I honestly don't have an answer, for it. I mean, right now, we try to do the best we can, dumping stuff right in some of the locations in town. We were supposed to be trying to haul that to the snow dump in the spring, but we kind of let it sit, a lot of it. To have a DEC-approved snow dump, you have to have the separation between water bodies is the big thing, and then some sort of filtration. And that's what the snow dump gives us. It's already that low land. But where, I don't know, where another big property would be that you could do that that's economical to do. You got to think about when we're hauling just out to Hemlock to the snow dump area versus even right in town here to these locations where we're trying to do a quick, huge amount of windshield time. The difference is, double, trip. I mean, if we can go here to the uplands and dump some and come back, even if we had to haul some that hasn't melted out and haul it in the spring, it's such a quicker run to get the streets cleared. Where going to Hemlock, once we fill up these, it's just a long run. It just takes us, and that's where we get stuck a lot in the mid to late winter as we have to go out there.
Okay. Councilmember Wells.
So, because the snow dump site is a total of, sorry, I don't have it right in front of me, 8.21 acres. How many of, I have a hard time believing that we use all 8 acres. We fill that whole 8 acres with snow?
Take a look at that map.
I am looking at it.
Okay, the little triangle along Hemlock.
Mm-hmm.
That is a skinny little triangle that's a waterway, basically.
Okay.
It's a drainage that goes out there. Right now, it's not something that's wide enough to use for much of anything. We enter through that. We do enter off Hemlock, go out, and we have end dumps and side dumps that travel in there, spin all the way around to back in and dump in there. And so that comes about, I think this year was about halfway across. 2016-17, we were probably 2/3 away, and I'm talking the big lot, nothing about the little lot, right? We're about 2/3 across, and we were roughly 30 feet high.
Okay, and how big of a footprint do you think that the new shop will cover?
The 4 acres is what we're looking. You talking just the building?
Well, the building and parking and a place for a lay down product. And
4 acres. That's what
you think?
We're asking.
Well, a whole 4 acres. Okay.
Do you think? I mean, it's just
no. I mean, I just
snow
know.
dump. It sits and it doesn't melt for a while.
Absolutely.
That's why we put it there. If we put it in the campgrounds, now we got to for sure haul it, and we're still close to the waterway, and that's what we got. Really.
How far from the waterway does it have to be?
There's a DE spec that I sent out, DEC spec, that showed what you can do and how, and can it be put in a recreation spot or not, and there's some rules against putting it in any recreational area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Wow. Other questions for Doug at this point? Yes. Councilmember Casagrande.
Have we ever had conversations with the railroad about dumping snow in all of their massive amounts of acres that they have?
Not that I know of.
We would still have to lease it, though. It would still, we'd have to enter a lease agreement for that as well. But no, we have not spoken with them because of that.
If I may follow up, sure. Is there, I mean, I don't know if we're gonna get somewhere tonight in the event that we don't, I hope we do, but in the event that we don't, is there a way we could have a conversation with the railroad about maybe some potential low-laying, like, this type of, I mean, they have so much acreage back there with all kinds of different types of terrain and stuff that maybe they have something they could lease to us for, and it's just more windshield time, I know, Doug, but just maybe for consideration to see about that. And as a follow-up question, okay. if I hear what you're saying, Doug, even though this is on here, realistically, it doesn't work.
It's a hard one to go through. I mean, there's a lot of logistics to get there. Anything can work, right? I mean, you can make any plan work when you put enough resources toward it. There's just some questions on the floodplain there too, and can we ever get it out or not, applying for the Lomar, Clomar, and maybe Stephanie can give a little more details on that part of it, on the floodplain area, on what that entails to change. It's just a much bigger process than I ever thought.
Okay. Other questions for Doug? Thanks, Doug. Yes, you have another question, Councilmember Casagrande?
Sorry, has there been any conversations with the Gillespies, and I know it's impending right now, and then again in the event that we don't get somewhere tonight, about potentially squaring off, doing like a land trade to make the street front straight across and making ours less of two triangles and more of a straighter?
There have been conversations, and the Gillespies are open to that. Where we are now is it's still preliminary, but talking about there would have to be, you know, an appraisal and a survey for the exact amounts that would, you know, be traded, and whether they're open to that. We would split costs, and we're still in conversations about that. Preliminary, they are interested in doing so. We have to work through all the details of it yet. And it's just very early on in that conversation.
All right, thank you, Doug. Would council be interested in hearing from Stephanie Presley about the flooding in that area? Does anyone want her to come up for a couple minutes? Would you mind, Stephanie? Just give us a kind of brief overview of what's what out there.
Stephanie Presley, Stewart District Flood Service Area Program Lead. So the flood insurance rate maps were from 2009, and the flood hazard area is the Resurrection River floodplain prior to the building of the levee section of Dick Graff Road. If we were to remap Resurrection River with FEMA, your floodplain or your flood hazard area probably wouldn't change a whole lot due to a national policy around how they map behind uncertified levees, which is what Dick Graff Road is considered. So our flood hazard area would probably remain the same. That being said, there is a Clomar-Lomar process, which is a conditional letter map revision followed by a letter map revision process. That would be part of your design and engineering and permitting process. So you probably want to add to your notes here another, 30, 40, 50,000 for the Clomar to be completed by your design team. And basically the engineer would take the FEMA model, they would put the development into the FEMA model, and they would show what changes to the flood hazard map it would create. That usually takes, once it's submitted, about 90 days for FEMA to then comment back to the community. Once you receive those comments, the community can decide to write a floodplain permit for that development. Once that development has been completed, then you have to go back to FEMA for a letter of map revision with the as-builts. Some of the concerns that I would have, knowing that the Seward Highway creates a levee across the Japanese Creek alluvial fan, as does Dick Graff Road. People in the neighborhood adjacent here have had some real drainage issues because they're basically boxed in by the two roads there. And so I think even if you were willing to permit this development based on that Clomar comments from FEMA, you got to take a look at the 39,000 or more cubic yards of material that's being placed. And when you place that much material and you compact it, you're displacing groundwater as well as floodwaters to other neighborhoods. So taking a look at the adverse impacts to the neighborhood, I think, would be important as well. I could go on, but I think that's probably
no. That gives us more than we had. Thank you very much. Yeah. Questions for Stephanie while she's up there? Okay. Thank you. Well, I'll bring it back to council then. Who else has something to say about all this while we're in committee? Councilmember Calhoun.
Just, could you guys remind me the size of the piece of property just north of the one we're looking at? On the other side of the electrical wire road?
2.5.
You talking about the north end of Fort Raymond,
Correct.
2.5?
That's 2.5 acres. That would still be available for somebody to develop for housing or warehousing or whatever people are interested in doing. I mean, you know, we look at this, in a perfect world, you know, the snow dump area might work for everything, you know, enough room to build the new shop and still have snow dump close to it, but there's, you know, there's a lot of expense to get there. I think there's going to be too much long-term expense with the railroad property, personally, is my thought. Even if they do a 100-year lease, which they will do at times, that's still going to end up being a lot of money that we may not need to spend. My preference at this point is the Fort Raymond property, simply because there's not nearly as much expense to make that happen. The one thing is making sure we can get through DOT with the other access that we're looking for. But having a city campus there with the animal shelter and electric utility, public works, all sits kind of in the same place. And that would be my number one choice, would be the Fort Raymond property at this point. There's just, if we have to make a decision, or they want a decision tonight, I think the snow dump area just has too many other questions with the flood zones and the ground integrity and all that, plus the expense to even get it there, which is sitting at about $1 million right now, and we don't know how much more that would end up being as things seem to go. So, and with my conversations with Public Works, and over a period of time with administration, I think they know my feelings, but that would be my choice.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Cosgrove?
Is there still a well house on that other 2 acres, or is that abandoned?
Doug, you mind coming back up?
Sorry.
Get your exercise tonight.
I don't need it. Get me a couple of times, I probably need a few up downs there. Yes, there is a well house sitting there, but it's abandoned wells there, so we do need to do the full-on abandonment. We had 3 wells at one time on Fort Raymond. 1 well house is still sitting there. 1 well has been abandoned, and what I mean by abandoning a well, you have a contractor come and they cut it off lower, they fill it with bentonite. The idea is you just don't get more stuff down there, then they cover it back over. So that's, there is 3 there. There is a well house that just needs to be pulled out of there. But it's not being used for anything.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes, Councilmember Osenga.
Yeah, I think with all the factors that are coming into these 3 different properties, I think most of all being cost, just to be able to start off a project like this. I think when you get to $1 million before you even start looking at a building or fencing or anything else, that's quite an undertaking. And I do wonder if there's going to have to be some kind of testing done at the snow dump site, additional testing just to make sure. I mean, we did testing at the Gillespie site, and I'm just wondering if that might be a factor for the snow dump site. For me, the railroad property, leasing it to me is just not really I don't think a fiscally smart idea. We own land, we have a place to put this, and we don't have to pay somebody else to do it. And not only that, the railroad crossing there at the railroad property is just, that would be kind of a pain. So I really do think that when you take in all the factors of cost, the utilities that are already there, the amount of prep work we would have to do to get a building and a site built, I just think that Fort Raymond also is the #1 spot.
Thank you. Councilmember Wells.
So, in response to the Fort Raymond property, I do know that we are being asked on a regular basis to help aid the housing shortage, and we have people who want to purchase the Fort Raymond property and put in housing. if we sell the Fort Raymond property, yes, it's $1 million to get the snow dump property together. But if we sell the Fort Raymond property for $550,000, we've now cut that expense in half. Plus, we're not taking into account that once we move the current location, that property is then going to be up for sale. So does it cost $1 million? Yes. But is it a wash? Yes. And plus, so it's a wash on the expense, but we're also producing housing and helping that. So I'm still for the snow dump property.
In a mix. Anybody else want to comment before? Well, I'll give my 2 cents. I think in terms of cost to the taxpayers, the Fort Raymond makes most sense, regardless of the potential of housing or whatever we get for selling it, because there will still be more Fort Raymond property there left to do that with. I'm a little skeptical about people wanting houses right by the generator. I remember when we were considering putting, well, where the animal shelter's going in, people were worried about the animals having too much noise from the generator. The generator's loud. I can hear it from my house on Bluefield when it's on, if the windows are open. So that's a factor. My brain feels like consolidating everything in one spot, since we've got the electrical there, that makes some sense to me. So if we were to be voting tonight, which we may be when we come out of committee, I think my vote still is with Fort Raymond. There are fewer unknowns, I think. I'm really skeptical about the land, quality of the land that we can build on at the snow dump. And I like having a snow dump, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. Anybody else want to comment? Councilmember Casagrande.
What is the measurement of an alley generally? How wide?
20 feet wide.
Okay. I could support, if I may,
Go ahead.
the Fort Raymond station location. I personally, and it's just one person, would like to see commercial lots along Diamond that would essentially take 0.75 acres away from the 4.14 acre proposed lot. I think that it would be good for, I just keep on thinking, like, we're gonna basically take this eyesore, no offense, Doug, I already told you this before, take this eyesore out of the middle of town, and then we're going to put it over so that not just the residents can see it, now everyone sees it. It's going to be the welcome to Seward. And Doug talked to me about this, about how, you know, we can make it pretty, we got trees, we'll make a nice building, but you know, I just sitting here doing some preliminary measurements. It seems to me that you could do 12 30 by 100 lots along Diamond with an alley behind it, and then have the public works still have room to be back there, but you have a business type synergy of when you drive into Seward, and it feels like a commercial area like we all intended it to be. I think that's the reason past council voted to have this auto commercial, is because that was the vision. And so I don't know what that does for Doug's plans. I know right now the city shop is on 3 acres maybe, and maybe we can still take some of the city shop plans, still utilize the snow dump, you know, maybe that's where the gravel shed can go and some other things that are at city shop. But that's just my 2 cents, because I want to make all, like, I hear a recreational facility, which would be still great. There's plenty of room for that there. There's still room to maybe, you know, do some auto commercial lots back bordering that with the recreational facility. I feel like there's a way that we can make everything work here and still use the snow dump site as well for some things.
Thank you. First of all, yeah, Councilmember Osenga.
Okay. You know, great thought process. I appreciate your thought process there, but the only thing that does that I can see is one of the concerns about having this placed here was that we were talking about having people using, or are city employees using Diamond and then going to Sea Lion Avenue to access the highway. If you have this property here you remove the front of this property, then and you sell it individually, then you take the ability, you remove the ability to have Diamond access the highway there, right? Because you're talking about, right here, because this is where they're talking about if we can make that access the highway there straight, then DOT might let us have access to the highway where Diamond used to hit the highway.
Right there in the corner?
Yes, right in the corner. According to this map, anyways, that's what I'm thinking, is this outline here. I'm trying to figure out how putting 12 commercial businesses there, you say, how that doesn't affect traffic as well as, or more so than our city crews trying to get in and out of there, I guess.
That's a thought. Well,
Yes.
okay, Councilmember Casagrande and then Councilmember Wells.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, you could ask, there's all kinds of options, I'm just throwing things out there. I wanna see everything taken care of, and, you know, that property owner that has that triangle, who's to say maybe they're not willing to sell, to create a right-of-way. So, you know, there's still options. We were about ready to spend $1 million to make the snow dump site work. You know, we got some money, maybe we can get in there, get a right-of-way, which might be more costly now, but in the end, if you can create an auto commercial area, still I don't know, I'm just brainstorming, I'm not attached to anything, so.
Councilmember Wells.
I have two questions. One, and I don't know if this is inappropriate or not, but I don't quite understand, Doug, how the turn process, and would it be possible if he could just draw it on my piece of paper so that I could visually see it, because I'm a visual person? Is that inappropriate?
Is that okay?
Oh, sure, come on up.
I just-
if we had the whiteboard still after the remodel,
can't
but.
see
Yeah, the
it.
whiteboard map, you know.
We were just
I'm
talking.
sorry, I can't see it in my brain, I don't understand.
Pass around, is
The
that?
city manager has a.
Yeah, and great, thank you, Doug. And I just wanted to add that we had a conversation with the property owner, the Triangle property owner, to trade access to get a straight driveway in, and they were not interested in doing so. So,
For the right price.
well, yeah, maybe for right.
And I kind of
but
did
we
an
were
extra
just
line in the
having
middle
trade.
there.
No
but
problem.
Basically, where this triangle meets the highway and the Chugash meets, you still have
Yeah,
7
so for
feet
the-
here
Because that's
that
it.
straight in. So
Okay.
now you're perpendicular with.
For the listening and
I
watching
understand.
public,
Okay, can you hold it up so everybody can see it? and
Maybe
then
we
you
could
can
have it-
And mention that
way.
To hold it
Yeah.
to the camera.
Yeah.
And
Oh, is that possible?
My drawing is very poor.
And
so
Madam Mayor, I am
Yes.
gonna, I just
It's
do
a
want to add that we're
perpendicular
actually
straight in.
adding maps to the room.
This is the
and
corner of the.
We're
Yeah,
adding
oh,
maps
yes,
to
I
this.
know. Yes, for the viewing public,
They want us to
the,
come straight off,
thank you.
not angled back.
the room has been painted, and so the maps and things are
Oh,
off
yeah.
the walls right
Okay.
now.
I just
That's
don't understand what. I
that's
just don't
part
get
of
it
the
coming.
issue.
Straight off, this is the Chugash.
But it smells
This is the
very
corner
fresh
of
in
the-
here.
The smokehouse, so there's still 60, 70 feet.
And this is important.
They want it perpendicular,
Yeah.
they do not want this cut back, because this was a traffic
And so
problem.
while
When they
he's
cut
discussing
off,
that-
and when we put Dick Raff Road.
I just have one more question
when we
Yes.
get
to it.
That out as the
Well-
primary road.
Yes.
for the-
Okay,
for the
hold on.
town. That's.
Okay, Councilmember Wells.
Can,
Yeah.
Oh,
Mayor,
yeah, Madam
if
City
you
Manager.
would, Doug, I mean, all joking aside, hold it up for the camera and for the public, so
Do
that.
you have to have like right in front of it, or?
Well, I'm
I-
not sure what you can see. You
Yeah.
know better than I do.
All right. well,
So now Doug is back there holding it up to the camera. Yes, Madam Clerk.
If you could just make a copy of that and give it to me, I'll upload it.
There you go.
Thank you, Brenda.
I'll make a little nicer copy.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you. This is how
trying to get
committees of the whole function, okay?
It's a highly
It's like
formalized
making
process.
sausage, really.
At least it's
funny
and everyone's
I think Councilmember Wells and then Councilmember
Yes.
Calhoun.
So, if I understand correctly, if we move the current location to either the snow dump site or this site, then the current location will become, is that correct? So, is that correct? And do we have an idea on how much, thank you Doug, I really appreciate it very much. Do we have an idea on how many units that we can put at the current location?
City Manager?
At the
Or-
current shop?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Or
Yeah.
Doug?
Yeah, there's 32 lots
Yes.
that are 30 by 100.
32 lots that are 30
That
by 100.
includes where the animal shelter is now,
Mhm.
and then all of, so if you did 30 by 100 lots like they're,
Like
you know,
everybody else, yep.
normal plat right now, you'd have 32.
Okay.
Of 30-foot lots.
So then I would just like to say that as long as we are taking care of some sort of housing, then I'm on board with either the snow dump property or the Marion property.
Thank you.
I just-
Councilmember Calhoun.
Yeah, one other question. The property to the east and north of the Fort Raymond property we're looking at, that kind of triangle between Diamond and the highway, who owns that?
We do. The city owns that.
And how big is that?
2.12 acres in total, but with the
Well,
power
I know
line,
there's,
with the power line that bisects it, there's 1.4 usable acres on the north side of the
on
power
the
line.
north side of the power line, right? And of course, there's, highway setbacks, stuff like that. But that is something else that could be used in addition for commercial property or our own use or whatever. That's still available.
There is interest in that property as
Yeah,
well.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Oh, okay, other questions, comments? Well, Councilmember Demas, and then if that's all right.
I think originally I was really kind of focused on the snow dump spot, but after thinking about it and hearing everything, I think Fort Raymond is the way to go, and that's where that would be my number one, and I'd be ready to support that.
Thank you. Councilmember Casagrande. Yeah, sorry, I just want to say again that I'm willing to support the Fort Raymond property as well. I really would like to slow down and really take a look at getting as much development in that area as possible, that we can also cater to auto commercial lots and auto commercial development. And I know the triangle piece is not interested in a trade because they have a building on that triangle, so it's not a trade to trade a building and a piece of land for a raw piece of land. But I do think that they would possibly be open, I don't know honestly, to selling the city that property for a cleaner right away. And then we could also develop that triangle there. Councilmember Calhoun, then you have just, I worry having another access in that upper triangle so close to Sea Lion would just create, it's already hard to pull out of there. More congestion too close.
I have a question for administration. When we come out of committee, we may have a motion to decide on one of these and a vote. If we were to vote on Fort Raymond, this isn't, the plan now is this the way it has to be, or can we pursue modifications on the Fort Raymond plan, such as Councilmember Casagrande was suggesting?
Madam Mayor, I would say that if you do intend on modifications, include that in your motion. And the reason I say that is because then we'll move on to the next steps, which we can bring back before you to let you know what we're thinking as far as, we have to do engineering design and so on and so forth. So we can bring that back before you, but the motion could be, Fort Raymond reserving, a portion or something to that effect. But that gives us the direction so that way we can then start working on plans that do come back before you.
If that were to be the case. Okay. Any other comments before we come out?
Oh, no, that's right, sorry, that's right.
Okay. Citizen comment on this? We could have, if it's okay with everyone, have Carol come back up. Carol?
Thank you for letting me speak again. I just wanted to point out that if you cut off Diamond, you'll have to put in a cul-de-sac as per code, borough code. And 30 by 100 foot lots are south of Phoenix and the Seward Highway. North is 60 by 100 foot lots. And can parking be used under the power line right of way or easement? That might be a good place for a parking.
Other comments? Are we ready to come out of committee and maybe entertain a motion? Okay, I'm not sure how I do this. I think I just gavel this out of committee. Okay, I don't have talking points here. Okay, the committee of the whole is ended, and we're back on the record in our regular, our special meeting. Councilmember Casagrande.
I'd like to make a motion to direct the city manager to bring 3 different development plans back to the city council to include the relocation of the city shop for Fort Raymond.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
Can I ask a question?
Question.
Thank you. Do you meet 3 different development plans for the Fort Raymond site? And are those development plans for the shop, or what am I?
So basically, I'm throwing this out there for discussion because I have a second, so anyone can feel free to amend it however you want, but just so that we're not coming back and saying this is how it's gonna be, and then at that meeting, we're like, well, what about this, or what about that, and what about this? So 3 different, I mean, not to just include, like, for me, I felt like this when we took off a chunk of land for the hospital. It's like, we really should have developed the whole area at that time. And so instead of doing chunk by chunk, I think it's really important that we come up with a comprehensive plan for all the property that's there to include the city shop.
Madam City Manager.
Part of the reason why we haven't done that is because this was still in play for the city shop. So we didn't want to come up with a different development or speak to or start negotiating with those who want to make offers until the council made a decision. So that's part of why. So that's where we are.
Okay, Councilmember Osenga.
My only problem with this is that if you're going to try to develop 3 different ideas, you're going to include other people in this discussion, people that are showing interest in the land, then all of a sudden it's not the Fort Raymond Public Works facility anymore, it's a development of that entire piece, and then you have other entities trying to get in there. I think right now our focus is on Fort Raymond property, is for the relocation of Public Works Department or facility only. It's not developing whatever else there is, because I think we need to be kind of focused on what our purpose is here tonight, which is the relocation of Public Works facility.
Councilmember Wells.
Okay, I like where Councilmember Casagrande and Osenga are going with this. I hear what you're saying as far as having additional properties there, and there may be 2 ways to go about that. One is if we just show, like you had on, well, nobody saw your drawing, but except for me. If we were to say, okay, this much of that property is to be used for the Public Works building, and then we save this sliver for possible future development for commercial. But then at the same time, I'm looking at the map, and on the highway side, we have that big chunk of property that could easily be turned into commercial development that would also block, because I hear what you're trying to block the highway view, not to look like a big shop. We don't want people to see that when they first come in, but we have this whole piece of frontage property that if we were to develop that as a commercial area, then we don't have that such an eyesore per se.
Councilmember.
And that's what, an acre usable?
1.4.
1.4 acres usable there.
Yeah.
Councilmember Casagrande.
If I may, just to keep on the discussion item of what I would like to see us figure out a way to direct the city manager, because there are a lot of ifs about the right-of-way, which is still on the same, as Carol just said, a cul-de-sac. So now, do we still have, what are we still dealing with? And so I definitely can support that we all are in support of Fort Raymond, but I don't necessarily know that this drawing that we have in front of us is exactly what we all want. And if it is, then I will withdraw my motion.
Do you want to modify your motion?
if I could ask administration, what would be the best way, what's the best direction, I think maybe you're picking up what I'm laying down, is to bring forward a development plan for relocating the city shop to the Fort Raymond, what do you call it? It's not the Fort Raymond station, Fort Raymond subdivision, to include accesses, easements, and, the development plan that I was proposing, the 3 development plans, was not advising city administration to go out to all these entities and be like, what do you want? It's more so like for us to figure out what we want and then saying this is where there's land open for the future.
Councilmember DeMoss.
So would you say something like what we got back on the Hemlock subdivision? Or more specific?
No, so what we got back on, if I may, Matt.
Go ahead.
What we got back on the Hemlock subdivision was actual engineering, correct? Like that was a costly one? No. More so just kind of what we have here. I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know. Sorry.
Okay. Madam City Manager.
I think that I understand what you're saying, but so to me, correct me if I'm wrong, it would be a motion, it sounds like there's agreement on Fort Raymond, so a motion that this would be the future Public Works shop site, and then it sounds like then there would possibly like to be a reservation of part of that land for commercial development, so meaning that the this would be the Public Works site with, for lack of technical term, a strip of land saved for commercial development along that. And then along with that, then we would, obviously we have to bring back all the plans, for the Public Works shop. And then we'd also look into the feasibility of it, the zoning and how do we need the cul-de-sac, what do we need for that? And then be able to tell you, is it feasible? If it's not feasible to have that strip of land be for commercial, then council will know and then we'll talk through that. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
Okay.
So Councilmember Casagrande, do you want to modify your?
Sure, let me see what I wrote. Go ahead.
Excuse me, one.
Just say something real quick.
Councilmember Calhoun.
And I hope nobody ever takes anything personally, because I never mean it that way, but it almost seems we're kind of complicating this a little bit more than we need to. There's enough other property right around there that we can develop commercially and still meet the need for that whole thing. But I think what we really need to do is just say, this is the place where it's going to go, and then we can deal with DOT on the correct access. We don't have to worry about, well, if we put and I don't mean it's going to be this, but if we put a strip mall in front of it, how much room is that actually going to have to take before we can start building the facility behind that, and the other kind of parking and access and everything else that is going to get involved in that one particular piece. I just think we need to decide if that's where we want it, that's the piece, that's where it's going to go, and then we can look at the development plan commercially for the other properties that we own right around there. That's just my thought.
Thank you. Councilmember Casagrande.
If I may please modify my motion to direct the city manager to bring a plan to relocate the city shop to the Fort Raymond subdivision. And I don't know, I can't remember who seconded.
Does the second agree? Okay, so we have a new motion now. Everyone clear on that? Is there any more discussion on that? Madam Clerk, I think we can call for a vote. Would you please read the motion?
To direct the city manager to,
Go ahead.
is that why you were looking to me?
Well, I was going to say, if I get it wrong, correct me.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
go ahead, you
Sure.
state it, and you correct me.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
okay. Direct the city manager to bring a plan to relocate the city shop to the Fort Raymond subdivision. At the Fort Raymond
Property.
Fort Raymond property, I think
Okay,
it should say.
thank you. Yes, I
But
agree.
before the vote, we have a hand. Councilmember Osenga.
Is there discussion now for this?
Well, I was asking, if we're not ready to vote yet, we can still discuss.
Can we still, okay, because this isn't actually stating anything about selecting this site. This motion doesn't say we're selecting the site.
Could you read the motion again?
Direct the city manager to bring a plan to relocate the city shop at the Fort Raymond property.
This
To
is
the
to
Fort
develop-
Raymond property.
To develop a plan to, not saying we're choosing this property.
Oh. How does,
You can make a second, you can make an amendment to her motion if you wish.
I wouldn't even know how to,
is it,
I said it and I don't even know what I'd say.
may I ask if it's clear to the city manager and assistant city manager the intent of this motion?
I would say the intent is to bring the plan. This is not the site selection. That motion does not select the site.
Okay. So could we, wow. Councilmember Cascaranda, can you reword your
Yes,
motion?
I'd like to make an amendment to the amendment of the
I don't
motion.
even know how
Okay.
that-
Direct the city manager to bring a plan for the council's decision to relocate the city shop to the Fort Raymond property.
Any objection?
I think it,
Do you feel,
I s- how about,
Can we say something?
okay, we
Maybe
need,
I should just.
Can we,
Councilmember Calhoun, go ahead.
just throw it out, can we say that we select the Fort Raymond property as the location for the new public works facility and direct the administration to bring back a development plan for that?
Does that sound okay
Yeah,
to you?
mhm,
Does the
absolutely.
second agree? This is now, how deep down are we in amendments here?
So if I,
It's just rolling at this point.
Okay,
She's modifying her motion.
the original
As
motion.
long as there's no
Okay.
objection in council, it continues. So,
Okay, thank you.
I mean,
Got it.
you're keeping track, Brenda. So
So,
the city council has directed the city manager. The city council has selected the Fort Raymond property as the site to relocate Public Works and is directing the city manager to bring back a development plan.
I got it.
okay. Are we clear on that? And I'm seeing lots of head nods going on. We're all clear on what the intent is now?
And no objection from anyone on council to that?
No objection.
Okay.
All right. Is there further discussion? This is your last chance before we go for a vote. Okay, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready
Okay.
to vote.
Okay, voting on selecting Fort Raymond property as the site and directing the city manager to bring back a development plan. Wells,
Yes.
DeMoss,
Yes.
Casagranda,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
and Vice Mayor McClure.
Yes.
That motion is approved.
Wow, we did it. Thank you. Okay, and it's clear with administration the intent. All right. That concludes what we had to do, and for the record, during all of the committee meeting, this was the discussion about various sites. We had presentations from administration on the sites, we had much discussion, and this is what we came up with. And now we're to citizen comments. This is towards the end of the special council meeting. Are there citizen comments? Got a citizen coming up right now. State your name inside.
Doug Chesler, Public Works Director, inside city limits. It's been a long time coming to get a site selected. I mean, it's been some different things going on. I appreciate going through that. It's really a cool thing to think we can start moving on one way or the other, and exciting to see a nearer future for getting those lots into residential hands over here on 6th. So thanks. I think it was just great discussions and all around, so appreciate it.
Thank you. Other citizens wishing to comment? Okay, then that brings us to council and administration comments and response to citizen comments. Administration, you can go first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I want to thank the council for your diligence during this whole process and just thank you for making this decision. You know, from our side, we didn't have a preference. We would do whatever you wanted us to do, and we wanted a site selected so that we can move forward. And we're very excited to move forward and to get that area opened up for residential and work with the Public Works facility. So we have a lot of homework to do, and of course that'll all be brought back before you. Development, financing, so on and so forth will be brought back before you. But thank you for making that decision.
Thank you. Okay, and then council comments. We'll start with Mr. Wells.
I think that was a great discussion, and I was happy to be a part of it. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Calhoun.
Same. That was the way it should be.
Councilmember Casagrande.
I'd like to echo what both the other council members said, and I'd like to thank administration, all of administration. Like, that took a long time, but it was beautiful, and that's exactly what it's supposed to look like. So thank you for all your hard work. I know it is probably frustrating to see a bunch of things just go out the door, but the work is not ever gone unnoticed, so thank you.
Councilmember DeMoss.
Just what everybody else said.
Councilmember Osenga.
Yes, I feel it was a good discussion tonight, or this meeting. Thank you, council members. Thank you, administration. I think it was good.
Okay, and I just think that this was a good representation of what a group of people can accomplish. We all came in with our own ideas and probably preferences, and we worked it out. And thank you to the citizens that were here. This is a big step in sewer development. It's even bigger than the new animal shelter, which I thought was the biggest thing. So very exciting, and thank you very much. And with that, I'll adjourn the meeting at 6:41.